let's do this. So, how was career fair? What did you learn from going to career fair? Were you confident? Did you read my note? Did you make eye contact? Shake hands? Listen? Were you prepared? How'd you feel? Feel confident? Darren, did you feel confident? That a girl. All right. Anybody get a job? You got interviews? Good. How many of you walked away feeling good about career fair in your experience? Raise your hand. All right, good. Hey, where's our guy? Who spoke at career fair?
Oh, he's in Nashville for the CMA.
Oh, we got him all ready, and now he dissed us. That hurts me. Yeah, did you guys see him? He was at the luncheon? Were you proud of him? See, I like it. Way to go. That's great. You guys were all part of that. Very cool. All right, good. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you got something out of it. I think there's some really cool opportunities out there today. By the way, speaking of opportunities, I was flying back this weekend, and I sat next to a guy who's, I think maybe the COO of corporate services industries. Do you guys know what that is? I think it's corporate services industry. They own all the funeral homes in the U.S., right? So listen to this conversation. So we're having a really nice, interesting conversation. He commutes between New York and Houston, and we're talking, and I said, who do you work for? And he tells me, I go, funerals? He goes, right. And I went, huh. And that always kind of, I'm like, ooh, I don't know. I don't like dead. It's just one of those things. I just never have. It's never been good for me. So anyway, we're talking, and I said, that's an interesting business. And he goes, yeah, and it's getting more interesting all the time. I said, how so? He goes, because we're learning that people, and they're wanting to do celebrations of life rather than funerals, right? And they want to have an experience. We're doing champagne toasts. We're doing all this. So we're becoming more caterers. And I said, oh, man. I said, you need to give me your card. He goes, why? I said, because I got students that can do all that. And he goes, I hadn't thought about that. I said, well, yeah. I said, hospitals do it now because the Affordable Care Act measures patient care as one of the fundamentals, right, for them to get paid. So there's great opportunities for you guys in hospitals today to create patient care regimens and protocols. What's a hospital? It's a hotel with doctors. You check in, you check out, they got housekeeping, they serve meals. It's a hotel, just they got some doctors running around, a few nurses scattered about. But that's all it is. They got housekeeping, they got the whole thing. There's great jobs in hospitals today. Do we have any hospitals at the career fair? We need to do a better job of that. Anyway, how many of you would go to work for a funeral home if you were in charge of the event? Raise your hand. Yeah, especially if they paid you well. Plus, I don't know, you're not working holidays, I guess. They bury people on holidays? I don't know the answer to that. Anyway, I just thought I'd let you know I was working on your behalf while I was gone. I got you some great opportunities, I think. I think it'll be good. All right, so, well, I'm glad career fair was successful for you. I'm glad you felt confident about it, and I'm glad that you got to practice some of your skills, so that's good. Now, let's talk about a couple of things. One is I've been getting your emails. Boy, have I been getting your emails. So I appreciate that. And they all look really good. And some of you took the time to tell me a little bit about the class, and I appreciate those remarks. And some of you have sent me some links about some very cool areas around communication and some content that I hadn't been aware of. So I'm very appreciative of that as well. For the most part, I think everybody was doing what I asked. I got more calendar appointments, so I'm appreciative of that as well. Looks like we're all doing the things we talked about doing. So I'm going to write a note to the associate dean and tell her that she needs to anticipate that everybody in this class is going to get an A. Don't take that literally. But I mean, you guys are just doing great, and I want you to know how much I appreciate it. You're just doing the things we're talking about and practicing them, and I really appreciate it. So thank you for that. So, speaking though of, we do need to continue to, in addition to the presentations and our discussions around communication, we do need to have some other opportunities to assess a grade. And so Spencer and I were kind of thinking about this the other day, and I sent Spencer away. I said, dude, you're a smart guy. You're creative. Go figure out something that the students today would really like to do to demonstrate their ability, their creativity, and their communication ability. And he came back 2 days later, and he goes, I got it. I said, what do you got? He goes, we're going to ask the students to create a meme. I thought this is such a cool idea. What do you think? I think it's a great idea. Now don't go rob somebody else's. I want everybody in the next, yes?
I did this in high school and it was probably the funnest experience.
Okay, there you go. Don't use the one you used in high school.
I don't even remember.
Come up with a different one. But I want everybody to do it. Do you want to do it as a team or you want to do it individually? Individually it is. Okay, do it individually, create your meme, and we're going to present it. Now listen, I'm only going to give you 30 seconds to present. Okay? So you got to be ready. So let's do it this way, Spencer. And we've got some direction for you, right? I think we created, we looked at it. So Spencer will post it on there, but you're going to have 30 seconds to present. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to send it to Spencer. And Spencer, I was thinking about this over the weekend. What we're going to do is we're going to load this into a PowerPoint, right? And that way we can just go one after the other. I'm trying to figure out how to get everybody to do it, and so that's what we're going to do, unless somebody has a better idea. Nicholas, Spencer.
I just have a question.
I'm not sure I have an answer, but go ahead.
Does the meme have to be a photo or can it be a video?
I think a photo would be easier for me to like put it all together. If that's cool.
Fair point. Lizzie?
Can it be a photo that's been used as a meme before but with different text?
Yes. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, you don't have to, yeah. But just don't infringe on anybody's copyright. Seriously, that's an important part. I want you to learn that. We were just talking about that in the law class, right, Queenie? Don't infringe on anybody's copyright. Do you know how to avoid that? Well, if it's got a watermark or if it's got the copyright symbol, that means you got to pay a fee to use it. Now, there are exceptions for education, but if you guys create this meme and then go post it on your Facebook or go do something, somebody's going to hit you up for a bunch of money. So be careful just grabbing any image that's out there. There are a lot of sites that have free images that you can grab, but you need to do a little research to find that, okay? Or you can take your own. Sound fun? But the whole point from my perspective is I'm not so interested in the content. I want you to present it well. Does everybody get that? That's what I'm looking for. Okay. Brianna, did you have your hand up?
Does it have to be related to?
No, it can be anything you want to do. Does that help? Yeah. Whatever interests you, do it about that. It's destiny.
Yeah. So whenever we present it, like we're supposed to talk about what it means.
Yeah, I think that's important, right? Let's. If it's not clear from the meme, right? That's part. Hold on, but that's part of the communication. The meme should be clear, right? Now, there's going to be some generational gaps. So as long as it's clear to your peeps in here, I'm good. I'm not your audience. People your age are your audience. Is that fair? Okay. And it needs to be, clear. That's part of the communication aspect. And then, yes, how did you come up with the idea? It's a great question, Stephanie. Destiny, how did you come up with the idea? How did you build it? Right? And it might only take you 15 seconds. I'm okay with that. You just can't go longer than 30. Everybody good? And it'll give you another chance to be in front of everybody that I know you're dying to have. But it'll be a fun way to do it. And you can practice being still. You can practice your movements, right? Practice projecting. You can practice all the things we talked about. You do not have to use the presentation template for this. You don't have to be that detailed. but you do know how to get people's attention. You do know how to project your voice. You do know how to have your posture. You do know how to practice with your hands, right? All right. Now, this is also practice of not doing this. Don't do that. You're going to be here. It's going to be here. Try not to look at the screen. Stay face forward. Right? Can we practice that? You can look and glance if you want, but don't talk to the screen. I'll fail you if you do that. Kind of. Does everybody understand? Great question. Thank you. Any other questions about it? I'm glad you did it. I'm glad you liked it. A teacher came up with that?
Yeah, I think it was like economics or something.
Very cool. Yeah. All right. How many of you just spend all day going through Instagram and looking at these things? Raise your hand. Lizzie does a hand. Yeah. Well, it's one of those things. All right. Yes.
So send it to him over the weekend or before next week?
That's such a great question. So, we've got a couple of things scheduled over the next couple of class meetings, right? Today we're going to wrap up our conversation about communications in the workplace. And I'm going to and that's not going to take us long. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about collaboration aspects. So, we actually have a day scheduled for presentations next Thursday. Tuesday would have been collaboration. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Thursday would be collaboration. So, yes. Can some of you try to get them done by Thursday? How many of you think you can get them done by Thursday?
This Thursday?
This Thursday. Yeah, if let's do it this way. For those of you that get it done by Thursday, let's plan on going Thursday. Everybody else, it'll be the following Tuesday. Is that okay? So if you want to get it up, you got time, you got an idea, and you want to do it, things cool, Thursday will be your day. And just get them to Spencer so we can load them up and be ready to go so we can get through as many as we possibly can. I'm sorry for the assembly line approach, but I want to give everybody an opportunity to get up. And everybody else will be do that Tuesday. Are we good? Questions? Alice?
Do we send it to Spencer's email?
Send it to Spencer's email. You do not need to copy me on this, please. Spencer?
I also post like a Dropbox, so they can post it there too, just in case.
Yeah, sure. He's going to create a Dropbox folder so you can drop it in there, which is a great way to get used to. How many of you are familiar with Dropbox? Okay, we'll get that way because that's part of the collaboration tools that we're going to talk about. Hannah?
Do we do both or just one or the other?
I would prefer both, so we both, I can.
All right.
So
Spencer, why don't you post a little note that just says what you want them to do, and that way everybody can follow it. Sound fun? All right. Kayla, those of you that came in late, Amanda, we're going to create a meme. You got it? Okay. And you're going to have no more than 30 seconds to present it. Starting Thursday, everybody else by Tuesday, right? So if you get it done by Thursday, we're good to go. When you're finished with it, though, send it to Spencer so we can load them up so everybody can just go. Okay? And the podcast, there's some other stuff on there that you guys want to listen to about the presentation. Okay. All right, then. I'm glad you're glad. I'm glad you're excited. How are we coming with your more passionate presentations? You working on those? So if I asked you to do it today, could you do it? Who could do it today? Raise your hand. It's not, if you can't do it today, it's not a big deal. I just want to know. All right, I expect everybody to get ready. I keep pushing this, and I'm going to give you a little time frame. After spring break, I'm going to start calling on you to deliver these things.
The paragraphs?
This is the more passionate presentation I'm looking for, right? I'll tell you what I'll do. I will have Spencer, we'll post a little more direction for that in terms of length, and I want you to be ready to go, though, for those, right? We're going to continue to exercise our presentation skills, and I think the passion. And remember, I also said that if you want to do that one in your own language, your native language, your first language, you are welcome to. Okay? If that will be helpful or you'll feel more confident doing that. All right. How are we doing? Good? All right, very good. Now, let's wrap up this conversation about workplace communications. Emails look great. Subject lines were good. Signature lines were good. Spelling and grammar were 95% good. You guys need to realize that you need to use appropriate capitalization, lowercase, uppercase, in an email. And appropriate punctuation. Yes, for the most part, most of you did. Some, not so much. You need to spend a little more time proofreading. Is it important to proofread email? Got to do it. Can you rely on spell check with your email? No, you cannot. Didn't we walk through the ode to spell checker in here? Did I? Oh, I think we did it in another class that you might have been in, Josh. Did we do it in here? Okay, well, maybe I need to send that out. Maybe I'll get that to Spencer and you can read it in your spare time. But it just will teach you not to rely on spell check. Why not? Alice, say it again.
Some words sound the same.
Some words sound the same, but they have different meanings, and they don't even sound the same. But spell check doesn't know intent or context. So you're exactly right. Some do sound different, and there's other reasons also. Like, give me an example of two words that sound the same. Were and were. Yeah. W-E apostrophe R-E, we are, and were, W-E-R-E, the verb. Right? We're going instead of we are going. Weather, W-E-A-T-H-E-R, the weather outside. Weather, W-H-E-T-H-E-R, whether or not. If you use W-E-A-T-H-E-R and you really meant W-H-E-T-H-E-R, is spell check going to tell you it's wrong? No, because it doesn't understand context. That's the limitation of AI, artificial intelligence. It's not going to know that difference. So you have to learn to proofread. Besides, with autocorrect today, is it important to proofread? How many of you have gotten yourself in trouble with autocorrect? Right? And how many of you have gone, darn autocorrect? Yeah, you do that. That'll be a good meme. I heard of a meme that I really thought was creative. I didn't see it, but a friend of mine said, I was telling them about her about the assignment. She said, oh yeah, like this one. And it was, how many of you enjoy pho? The soup? Right? So it's yeah, it's a cafe, and the name of it is 20-pho-7. Have you seen that? 20-pho-7. You get it? Okay. Wasn't my delivery? It was good? All right. I thought it was funny. I thought it was really cute. All right. Yeah, that's good. Ryan, you liked it? Yeah. All right. If you liked it, I'm good. All right. Now, okay, so back to the workplace and emails. I talked to you about the need to learn to organize your email. I just want to reinforce that, right? And you can, we're not going to take the time in here to do it because it's all over the internet. You can take an Outlook YouTube video in 20 minutes and learn how to use that. You can use your Google Mail. The tutorials are everywhere. Just use them and learn how to do them. How many of you are comfortable now in setting up a telephone appointment or an actual meeting appointment with somebody via a digital calendar? Okay, you got to get that way. How many of you are comfortable now with time zones, at least across the United States? All right, good. You need to get that way. All right. How many of you are familiar with a concept called Doodle? Familiar with Doodle? Okay, Brianna, tell everybody what Doodle does.
So it's kind of like,
Can you speak up a little bit?
it's like an easier way for people with very different schedules to find a time that works for everybody.
That's right. Can you describe it a little further? That's exactly right.
So I work at the Wellness Center, and we used it to set up our staff meetings because we all have different professional and student schedules. And so the director sent out a doodle poll with like all these different dates and times, and we picked every single time that we were available, and it like auto-generates a time that works.
It aggregates everybody's available time. So it's a poll,
Yes.
is what it is. It's a survey. But it lays out If I was setting it out, I would send it out and say, okay, I'm available these 10 days at these times during these days. And if I was sending it to everybody on the front row, everybody would go on, it's in the cloud, and everybody would go on and say available, not available, 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 not available, not available, not available. And eventually, what are you going to have? You're going to have a common time when everybody could meet. And it really expedites the meeting planning process. Because otherwise, you go back and forth with email or texting, especially if you're more than 2 people, it's really challenging. So Doodle is a resource that I really encourage, or something like it. It doesn't have to be Doodle. Or do it. How many of you work at a place that uses hot schedules in the cloud? That was a huge change, right, in communication with employees. It's an in-the-cloud scheduling system, so people no longer have to go look at a schedule. They don't have to get it emailed to them. They don't have to call in to get it. You just click on it, there it is. And if I want to change with Allie, then there's a record of our changing, so that there's none of this, well, I changed with her, she says, no, you didn't, right? No more of that. It's all gone. Do you see how that solves some of our challenges? Doodle does also. So communication can really help us be more efficient if we utilize the tools that we have available to us. All right? So we want to do that. So look at Doodle as an opportunity to do that in the workplace, but you can also do it personally. I use it with my brother sometimes to try to figure out a common time when we can talk or plan things. All right. There's one other piece about workplace communication that we haven't spoken about, and that's the interpersonal side of communication, the face-to-face communication in the workplace. And given the Me Too movement, given any movement actually, I think it's important that we have a conversation about that in here, right? And we talked a little bit about it, but we talked more about, we didn't really talk about face-to-face. We were talking about emails and we were talking about texting, things like that. This is face-to-face. What are some of the challenges that we face, no pun intended, in the workplace with face-to-face communications?
Some people have different, like,
You guys, everybody put your name badges up. If you're good. I got it. Yeah, I got it.
some people have like different humor types, and so something that one person might think is funny and fine, another person thinks is wildly inappropriate and offensive.
Exactly. And because of those different interpretational aspects, they're all subjective, can we make mistakes? And when you make a mistake and you realize somebody is offended, what do you need to do? Apologize. How many of you have trouble apologizing? No? What does an apology mean, those of you that were in my leadership class before? Yeah, more than you do your ego. More, and it's, but being right is also part of it for sure, Ryan. Josh, similar, yeah. The relationship is more important than your ego if we apologize, right? How many of you have been in an argument with somebody and you couldn't bring yourself to apologize to them? Raise your hand. Most of us have had that experience. What gets in the way of us apologizing? Pride. Our ego gets in the way, right? So look, in the workplace, people that succeed today have high levels of emotional intelligence. People with higher levels of emotional intelligence have their ego in check. They have their pride in check. When they do something wrong, they can own it and apologize. And that's important to be able to do. How do you apologize? So Hannah and I were having a conversation at the water cooler, and I said something, and she looked at me and said, I can't believe you just said that. And clearly it was offensive. Now, there are a couple of ways I could approach that. I could say, I could get defensive and say, you're just being sensitive, or what's the big deal? But at the end of the day, remember what we said on the first day of this class. Is it important what I said, or is it important what Hannah heard? It's important what's received. It's important what Hannah heard. Kayla, are you doing all right today? Okay. You doing okay? Yeah. I mean, you want to? Yeah, all right, all right. Just hang in there. Okay. You're always just so vibrant or whatever, and today you're a little droopy. Okay. I hope you feel better. Okay. So that's one choice, right? Get defensive, push back, deny it. Go, really? I've said that to 500 people. They haven't said a word, right? But all of a sudden Hannah says, I can't believe you just said that. Well, okay, I could also do what, Nicholas? Yeah, it is a good question because it's it's not coming to your mind, and I want it to come to your mind. I want the alternative to come to your mind.
I guess you can like regroup and kind of look at yourself and what you said so you can be genuine in that apology and understand what the receiver got. It's
That's
really
another
hard
way. I could go, huh?
to regroup
Yeah, look, again, it's not about me. Who's it about?
him.
Hannah. So what else could I do, Caleb?
I just have a situation happen when someone is out of simple respect of them as a person, you shouldn't be able to say that thing that they don't like you, just because you respect them, they don't like you.
That's right. Just own it. Just go, oh my gosh. If I offended you, I'm terribly sorry. That was not my intent. You want to hear it again? Oh my gosh. If I offended you, I'm terribly sorry. It was not my intention. And I like to go further. And I'll never say that again around you. Never. Right? Because that's what they're looking for, right? They're looking for that recognition that, yeah, okay, I didn't like this. And you got to be okay with going, wow, because as Alice had said, not everybody sees things the same way. If I think things are totally appropriate, does that mean everybody else in the world is going to think they're appropriate? No, and it's that different world today. Look, we spent all this time and energy creating a diverse workplace. Do we have to respect everybody's diverse cultures? And that's part of what people get offended by. That's just part of it. But look, here's what happens. One second now. If I deny it, and I don't apologize, what's Hannah probably going to do?
Never talk to you again.
Well, she's never going to talk to me again, but she might go to HR. And now think about the cost to the company. This is why companies spend millions of dollars teaching people about emotional intelligence today. If I deny it, and if I'm really not a nice person, what else might I do? I might retaliate against her, right? Which is really unhealthy. You see that? Well, so, okay, though that's a lack of emotional intelligence, the need to retaliate against somebody for pushing back on me, right? But people do that. How many of you experienced that? All right, we're going to keep that in mind. But also then Hannah goes to HR and makes a complaint, right? Or says, hey, this happened. I just wanted you to be aware of it. Now, does that cost the company money? Is time money? Time is money. What's HR have to do? And rightfully so. They got to investigate. They got to come talk to me, and they got to, hey man, because look, Hannah's just one person. If I said it to her, could I have been saying it to other people? So it's not just about Hannah. It's about the entire organizational culture, and they have to investigate it. But that takes time. And then if I continue to deny it, or continue to be obstinate about it, or retaliate, then who has to get involved? Legal. Does that cost more money? It costs more money. And if it doesn't get solved there, who has to get involved? Then the government's going to get involved. Or outside lawyers are going to get involved. And what happens to the price tag then? It goes up and up and up. So companies are investing in emotional intelligence because workplace challenges, particularly in the communication area and the respect and dignity area, can be solved relatively quickly if we all recognize that it's not what's said that matters, it's what's heard. You get it? I had an award not too long ago, a couple of years ago at my conference, and one of my sayings that I have said for a long time in my business, and I have a lot of women that work for us, and as a self-deprecating thing, people would say to me, wow, that's really great. Or somebody would ask a question and I would say, oh, hold on a second. And I would say to somebody on the phone call, I would say, who can answer that? And then typically it would be somebody that worked for us. And they would say, thank you. And they would give the credit to me. And I said, no. I said, that's a perfect example of you can ask the man in charge or you can ask the woman that really knows what's going on. Right? And so I had a lawyer, and my team had never said anything about it. And so I had an attorney, a female attorney, and she took great offense at that because I said it as when somebody got an award, he was praising his assistant, who happened to be female, who had done so much work for him during his career to win the award. And I said, that's a perfect example of, you didn't talk to the man in charge. The woman really knows what's going on. And so she took great offense, and she wrote me back, and she really trashed me out pretty good. And I sat back and I thought about it, and I thought, okay, because I didn't like being trashed out, right? And when I thought about it from my perspective, I didn't see it as offensive. I thought it was self-deprecating, and I thought it was humorous, and most people laughed about it, and I'd used it in public before. And then I reached out to the women that had worked for me, and I said, how did you take that? And they said, no, we loved it. We took it as a compliment. And I thought, okay. I said, I have reassured myself that I haven't offended millions of people. So I felt good about that. But I also felt like I needed to respond directly to the person that wrote the note. And so I did. And I wrote a note. And the first thing I did was what? Apologize right up front. I said, if you were offended by anything I said, I am sorry. And I will reflect on this. And then I went on to explain why and where it came from. And she just wrote me back, and it was about a page long, and she wrote me back and said, thank you for the apology. And I went, lawyers. But anyway, my point is that could have festered, that could have gone on, but you recognize that it's what they hear. And look, did it matter to her? I never said in my note back to her that all these other people didn't react. That's not the thing to say, right? Because now you're just taking away her interpretation or her feeling. You got to let them own that. Even though if you don't think it's right, you've got to let them own that. Do you see that? Nicholas, you're struggling with this.
So I just feel like you should give feedback. Why do you take offense to this?
When you ask somebody why, what are you doing to them? Challenging them. I'm going to encourage you to think a little different and just apologize and go on down the road and then think again before you do it again. And you're going to have this happen. Everybody in the room is going to have it happen. How many of you have had it happen already? Yeah, it's going to happen. It's okay. But we just have to learn from it. Is that fair? And I'm going to encourage you to learn to apologize. I think it can really make a difference in your life and in your career. Yes, ma'am. I can't see your name. I'm sorry. Say it again. Yeah, that's an interesting question. And we're dying to know the answer, right? First, and listen, you can disagree. I'm okay with it. I would still suggest that you apologize. Because in almost every instance, we don't know why they're offended. If we thought we were going to offend them, we wouldn't have said it in the first place. Right? So we say it, they respond that way, and quite frankly, I think we're lucky that they tell us. Do you get that? So, if it's important to have that deeper conversation, I would do that. If Nicholas wants to do it, you want to do it, I would do that after the apology.
I was just going to say, I think it's important to recognize that there's a big difference between I'm sorry I offended you and I'm sorry that you were offended by what I said.
Yeah.
They're two very different.
Exactly right. And I hope in my apology that I said it was, if you were offended,
Yeah.
I apologize. Right? Yeah, I'm not saying you have to own it in terms of, you making her offended, because remember, oh, we haven't had that conversation in here. Hold on, let's back up. Can anybody make you angry?
Yeah.
No. The answer is no, absolutely not.
I think you can feel attacked.
You can feel that way, but who's owning that? You are. Who's in control of those feelings? You are. When you say, you made me mad, or you pissed me off, or that upset, who are you giving your power to? The other person. Stop giving your power away. Nobody can upset you unless what? Unless you let them. Do you see that? So don't give your power away to other people. Man, maybe we need to spend a little more time on emotional intelligence, huh? How many of you drive aggressively? How many have driven down the freeway and been cut off on the freeway? What's your first reaction? No sign language, please. Now, this is somebody that's driving down the freeway that you don't know, you've never... Listen, driving is a great metaphor for life. It's a great metaphor for workplaces. Do we have rules on the road? When people get outside those rules, if you react strongly to them, what are you giving up?
Your anger.
Your power, your control. You're letting somebody else do what? Impact your peace and your productivity. And if you do that in the workplace, how effective or successful are you going to be? Not very. So if you take the leadership class with me, we'll spend a lot of time on emotional intelligence. But we may have time to spend more time on it in here later. But I encourage you to really spend some time thinking about emotional intelligence. Let's talk about this driving thing just very quickly so you get a feel for it. But if you don't react to that person that cuts you off on the freeway or does something that you don't think is appropriate driving, what happened? If you don't react to it, what happened?
Nothing.
Nothing happened. Exactly right. And what does that mean for you? You got to go on with what? Your peace and your productivity. If you react to that, what have you done?
Giving your power away.
You've given your power away and let somebody else get under what? Under your skin. There's a great story I like to tell, and I'm not going to tell it because several of the students have already heard it in here, but the punchline, it's not really a punchline, but the moral of the story is you're only going to get one skin. Be darn careful who you let get underneath it. That's going to impact you mentally, emotionally, and physically. And if you're letting random people on the road get under your skin, what are you going to do with your significant other? What are you going to do with people in the workplace where things matter? So you need to practice your patience, practice your tolerance, driving. You're not the sheriff. You're not out there to teach people how to drive. If you want to teach people how to drive, join the Department of Public Safety. Sammy.
How can you see the line between having peace and not letting people affect you and not caring?
That's such a great question. She asked, is there a difference between not letting people impact you and reacting and not caring? What do you think? Well, what's the line then?
I think you kind of have to start with yourself and know yourself and know that when you argue, it kind of shows how much you value yourself. So if you don't let that a reaction come, you value yourself and you know yourself and you're humble in what you do and genuine.
And you have a foundation.
And you have a foundation, yeah. So and
You're not going to let little stuff knock you off it. Doesn't necessarily mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself more. You care about your peace and your productivity more. Let me put it a different way to you. Learn to not take things personally. You can care a lot and still not take things personally. If you want to read a book about that, there's a great book called The Four Agreements by Miguel Ruiz, R-U-I-Z. You can Google that on my website, stephenbarth.com. There's a reading list, and there's a link to Amazon. You can get it. And but that will help you learn to not take. Because, Nicholas, when we react on the highway or the road to somebody, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're giving away our power, but why? We're taking it personally. We're thinking, that jerk cut me off. But look, are there 1,000 other reasons why that person could have cut you off on the freeway? Yeah, they could be late. The highway sign could have been bad. They could have a pregnant spouse, taking them to the hospital, emergency, trying to take them to the hospital. All kinds of reasons, but where does our mind take us? That jerk cut me off, right? Have we ever cut people off? Unintentionally? Yeah. Have you ever been at the light looking at your phone, even though you try to be sensitive to that, and you get a little carried away and somebody has to honk at you? Has that ever happened? Yes, it does. So try to be a little more tolerant and give people the benefit of the doubt. I want you to care. I want you to care deeply. I just want you to learn to not take things personally. If we learn to not take things personally, and look, I had to learn that too. When I was your age, there was no way I could do the things we're talking about. That's why I want you to know it. When I sit around, my nieces and nephews ask me, if there was something you could have learned when you were our age, what would it have been? I always say emotional intelligence. Always. I found nothing that is that powerful in a person's life. It absolutely has the power to change your destiny. And it's been around for 2,000 years. We just didn't get it. It's just become more popular lately. Let me get 1 second hand. Somebody else had their hand up. Nicholas, did you have your hand up a while ago?
So you mentioned that we shouldn't hate people on the road as a job of the
Right.
But sometimes it can be raining really hard
Yep.
and visibility is low and
Yep.
people will be driving without their lights on.
Right?
And so I come up behind them and I'll flash my high beams
Yeah.
to try to get their attention.
Sure.
Would you consider that?
I don't have any problem with that because you're not reacting. You're doing a proactive, preventative step. Do you see the difference? I don't have any problem with that. Now, but if somebody is driving down the road and they pull out, or they come up to, maybe you're at a stop sign and you're getting ready to go and they kind of go, they don't stop before the stop sign and they come out, right? And then they stop and you start to go and you see them and you go, hey, what are you doing? You're supposed to stop, right? That's what I'm talking about. Don't get upset. Don't lose your peace. Don't lose your productivity. Do you see the difference? That's important.
This might be a little bit off topic, but I'd say around 4 or 5 days ago, I was actually attacked by someone for my scarf. And first, it was an older lady, and she was just bickering and she just kept arguing. She's like, "Why are you here?" I was like, "I was born here."
Yeah, right.
I'm just like you. I was just explaining. I was being very calm.
Good.
And I was like you said, I was being very calm. I wasn't
Good.
back to going crazy. And then in the end, whenever she was getting close, I pushed her back a little bit. I was like, "It's okay, calm down, it's fine. I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna head out." I didn't want to fight. She got her bag and she hit me with
What?
my whole face right here is all cut up. She hit me and because I didn't want a bigger scene, I didn't want anything. I ended up leaving.
You didn't call the police?
What were you?
I was
Driving?
in Cyprus. I was in a parking lot, a Target parking lot. I was just putting my stuff away. I was like, I'm just about to leave. And she's like, "Why are you here?" Blah, blah,
She
blah.
just came up to you?
She just came up to me randomly.
It does happen, doesn't it? It does happen. Listen, I'm telling you, and if you've never faced discrimination based upon race, color, creed, religion, national origin, it's an eye-opening experience. I had never faced it growing up. And then when I was out at Tech, when I was in Lubbock, I had a football player who he lived behind my house because he needed a place to stay. He was a defensive end, an African-American kid. Awesome guy. And we just became great friends. But two things happened that really opened my eyes to racial divisiveness in the United States. I think I've told some of you, my daughter had a little friend named Andrew who was raised in Lubbock. I wasn't. I was raised in Dallas, but raised in Lubbock. And Andrew was about 4 and a half when James moved into the back of I had an apartment behind my house, and he lived there. And the first day he was there, he came in. And Alex knew James from him visiting, and James was a student in my class, and that's how we got to know each other. And so Alex would hug James, and they were great, and they loved each other, and that was good. But the first time Andrew met James was an imposing fella. He was 6'3", about 240. But he reached down to shake Andrew's hand, and Andrew looked at him, and Andrew looked at me and said, "But he's black." And I said, "Well, his skin color is a little different than yours, but he's just like you are every other way." And Andrew said, he'd never experienced that. Now, this was 40, almost 35, 36 years ago. But that's one. And I went, wow, I'm living in a different bubble world, right? Well, then James says, "Hey, I've got to go visit my mother in South Carolina." That's where he grew up. He goes, "I know you're traveling up the Northeast." He goes, I said, "I am." I said, "How about I drive down and pick you up, and we'll drive back together?" He goes, "That sounds great." He says, "I'd like for you to meet my mother." I said, "Awesome." So I get finished with my stuff up in Boston. I rent a car, and I come down. I pick him up in South Carolina. We have dinner at his house, and then we take off, and we're driving, and we get into Georgia. And we got to stop for gas. And I said, "Hey, I'm going to fill the tank up. Why don't you go in, get us a couple of Cokes, and I'll come in and pay for everything." He goes, "Great." And he walks in, and I pump the gas, right? And then I go in to pay, because that's when you could do that. And I go in to pay, and the first thing I notice is there's a big, heavy-set white guy behind the counter with a gun on his hip. I never had a gun in my house. I know some of you grew up with that, but I had never had a gun in my house. I'd never been to a show. I'd never seen somebody in public with a gun. And I thought, and it didn't click for me what that was about. And I pay, and James and I are leaving, and he's got 2 Cokes in his hand, and this guy says, "Hey!" And I turn around, and I mean, it gives me chills to this day. It was 30 years ago. And he goes, "Are you going to pay for those Cokes?" And I said, "Whoa." And he puts his hand on the gun, and I said, "Whoa." I said, "I thought I paid for the Cokes when I paid for the gas." He goes, "Nobody paid for those Cokes," and he's leaving with them. He's trying to steal those Cokes. And I went, "Hey, man, nobody's trying to steal anything. Yeah, right? Let's put our hands here, and let's talk about this." Because back then, Cokes were like 29 cents. I said, "Hey, I got the money in my pocket. Nobody's trying to..." And I said, "James, just put the Cokes down and go get in the car." And James, he goes, "Yes." And he puts the Cokes down, and I got him outside. And then I went back to the guy, and I said, "Hey, man, how much do we owe you for the Cokes? I apologize. We didn't intend to steal anything." He goes, "What are you doing with this guy?" I said, "What do you mean what am I doing? This guy's my friend. We're driving across the country together." He didn't speak to me the rest of the time. He goes, "That'll be 58 cents and get out of my store." Whatever it was. But I'm telling you, that will shake you up. And I'm sorry that happened to you. That's horrible. Nobody should have to experience that.
But how do you handle or calm someone down in that situation?
I think you did all you could do. I think you've got to realize that there are people out there today, and unfortunately it's being fueled and fanned, which I absolutely hate. But I think you handle it just as well as you could. My hope would be in the future that you would call the police. But
I was honestly too scared.
I understand completely why you didn't. And I understand why a lot of people don't call the police, because sometimes the police can't be trusted. And that's sad. But I got the best education of my life driving back with James after that incident, because I learned about what a young black man in the United States went through. It was horrible. And I had no idea. No idea. So, I'm sorry you went through that. Yeah. But I admire the way you handled it. Yeah. I'm not sure I could have handled it that well.
I was just scared. I was trying to get out of it.
Good for you. I might have strangled him with a scarf. I hope that's not offensive. Yeah, but that's kind of what would have probably. I mean, really, lady? I'll show you what this scarf is really for.
No type of like social responsibility, like I don't want to say like justice lady, but like
Listen.
like if I like she's gonna go out and probably do that.
Here's the thing. You're exactly right, Nicholas. That's why I want to talk about this. Nicholas's point is the same thing, about driving. Because here's the thing that happens that we ask ourselves. If we don't stand up to this, are we enabling it for it to continue? And there's a real, speaking of fine lines that Sammy talked about, there's a real fine line between moving away and peacefully solving it, right, just for your own sake, and allowing somebody to go on and continue to behave like that. But what I'm trying to share with you is in a civilized society, we have law enforcement people that are supposed to take care of that role for us, and judges. Other people are supposed to teach people how to drive. Other people are supposed to hold people accountable, right? It shouldn't be up to us to whoop somebody's ass because they said something unkind to us. Because see, when we get to that point, what has happened to civility? It's gone. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. How many of you have been in a fight? Yeah, I know you have. I've been in my share. I mean, when I was back in the bar business, you couldn't be in the bar business and not be in a fight. But it was dumb. Looking back on it, I think, you moron. You could have gotten killed, right? It's the same thing when you get upset with somebody driving down the road. I'm not going to call you a moron, but it's the same concept, right? They can pull out a gun today and do what? Shoot you. Is it really that important? Let other people do their job. Now, you're going to find things that you want to make a difference in. I get that. Make a difference where you can in a broad context. March with people. Create memes that demonstrate to people that what they're doing is inappropriate, right? Make an impact in a safe way where we can live to talk about it tomorrow. Look, she could have fought back. She could have yelled and screamed and said all kinds of horrible invective things to this woman. But would that have done any good? When Nicholas yells, Nicholas, just bear with me, I'm not saying you do all this, but if Nicholas yells at somebody on the road, do you really think that's going to change the way they drive? No, it's not. There's an arrogance there that we think we're going to change people. We're not. Who are the only people we can change? Ourselves.
What about like a bystander effect in like that kind of situation? Because I feel like there is some sort of responsibility as a bystander to interfere in some sort, because I'm assuming from the story that there's a white lady, and so that kind of difference, like that mentality would innately trust a bystander like me, like another white woman, for example. So is there any sort of
I personally think it's a great question. I'm going to get right to you. I think that's a great question. How does everybody feel about that? How do you feel? Jonathan, I'll get to you.
So I'm manager of Pop Cedars,
Right.
right? I'm in the Woodlands. So of course, majority, I don't get that. Two different scenarios, right? There was a table, it was a family of black people and then another family of white. And then there was a bystander table, right? And then I was just talking and having a conversation with this one table. And apparently, the baby was crying. And that one table was getting mad and just saying all these racial remarks on this other table. The table next to them, who were also white, told them that, hey, just because we're here doesn't mean we're different, doesn't mean that we're entitled to it. They were standing up for that family.
Yep.
So it caused a big scene, but at the end of the day, well, one, we didn't have to kick out that table because they were saying all these racial remarks, but just that simple fact that another person stood up for that family, that family wanted to pay for their meal and all
Yep.
that stuff. Instead, what I did is I took care of it first of all, but the simple fact that you can make a difference by standing up for someone. I can't really do too much besides kicking them out because then I'm in a position where I can't. But someone who has nothing to do with the restaurant in general can stand up for another person.
I think that's a very good example of how intervention can help. And I think it can be very powerful. Do I think people have an obligation to do it? I personally do, but I've come to learn not everybody sees it that way and feels that way. I can tell you I have very few regrets in my life, but the regrets I have stem around the times I didn't stand up and intervene when other people were being treated unkindly. And those things live with me. Fortunately, there aren't many, but there was one time in Boston where a Portuguese fellow at a these food, what do they call them? Markets, right? They're outdoor markets where everybody's selling vegetables and fruits and everything. I was with my mother, and we walked up, and there was a lady, an Asian woman, and she was in front of us. And this fellow behind the cart selling, I subsequently learned he was Portuguese. Not that impacts. It didn't matter what it was. But he said the most horrible things to this woman. How dare you come to this country? What are you doing? And this was a person that immigrated themselves. You got to ask yourself how ignorant. It's just crazy sometimes. But this woman, she just stood there and listened. And I was getting ready to dump this cart all over this guy. And my mother doesn't take that stuff either. And she's grabbing me by the back of my britches. And my mother's tiny. And she's going, and it still bothers me to this day that I didn't stuff that guy in his cart. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying. But I didn't have any emotional intelligence back then either. Not that obviously I don't have a whole lot now. But I felt like, that you want to intervene. You want to do that. And I encourage you to do that in a way that's healthy, that doesn't put you in danger. Because look, today, with the proliferation of guns and the ubiquitousness of guns, you have to be mindful of that. I hate the fact that that's the reason you have to be mindful about it. But I don't think it'd be fair to you if I didn't remind you of that. Let's see. Brianna was first, and I'll get to everybody because I want to have this conversation. Brianna.
I think mine ties into both of theirs, but most of us are managers or will be in management positions. And I wasn't there for this scenario, but I was told that a white guest didn't want to be served by one of our black team members.
Yeah.
So what would you do, I guess, being a manager, protecting your team members, but also not having like a PR stunt on behalf of your company?
What would you do? What would you do? Hannah?
As a manager or restaurant manager, I would tell them that, our team members are all equal, and if they have a problem with being served by someone of a different color, then they can leave the restaurant.
How many of you agree with that? I think I can't improve on that. I think it's great. Way to handle it. I had that situation arrive, not me, but I had some people call me about it from a legal perspective at the hotel where they had a couple come in and they said, we're going to be staying for 3 days and we don't want anybody of color as a housekeeper. in our room. And the hotel said, we asked them to leave. And I stayed. They said, are we going to get in trouble? I said, absolutely not. I said, you'd gotten in big trouble if you'd accommodated their request, right?
Like I said, I wasn't there for this scenario, but I'm actually both white and black. My dad is black,
Ah.
and so I was thinking like I would secretly serve them, and then
And then
I would
tell
have
them.
great joy.
You've just been served by a
Right,
person of
yeah.
color. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we had some other thoughts that I want to get to, Hannah, and then I'll get to Mr. Marine over here. Zachariah.
It was just about intervening, like in different scenarios. I think that you can, instead of intervening, like you said, at the shopping or at the market, you wanted to cut in aggressively. Like you felt upset about it, which I'm sure many of us would feel upset if we saw something going on. But I think that maybe we could approach it differently by distracting that person and getting
Sure.
her out of a situation like
Yeah.
that because she was being attacked.
Right.
That's not right. So
That's right.
maybe we can just, kind of shift it.
Very good point.
Instead of bringing more aggressiveness into the situation.
Very good point. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, I think it's situational, like escalation of force, basically.
Yep.
You don't wanna, if you come into a situation, you don't wanna escalate it, basically.
Mhm.
So like in that situation, if she's like being attacked, then I would kind of step back and call the police myself.
Mhm.
As a bystander,
Mhm.
because you don't want to escalate that. Then now just a whole blown up thing.
It is.
And what it needs to be. So it kind of fits into
Mhm.
everybody's.
Yeah, I think the distraction part is a very good idea. I think that's good. Kayla,
I was actually
take us
reading-
home.
I was actually reading an article on this the other day, and it was saying that like when there's a minority group that's oppressed, that if you are not part of the minority group or the majority of the non-oppressed group, it's almost like you have an extra social responsibility to step up when you see something like that happening, because the person who is being belligerent or being discriminatory towards the other person, they see your opinion as more credible, and you should understand that you are the majority, so that because you have that extra credibility, your words do make more impact on someone else. So it's kind of like it should be
Very
your
good point.
responsibility to
Yeah, very good point.
Pretty much what I was trying to argue.
Yeah,
Make it
yeah.
feel better.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Yeah, very good. I like it. And I encourage all of you, when you go through your life, right, to kind of be mindful of these things and to step in where you can. I think it's important. I tell you, one of the best stories I ever heard, and I assume it's true, it came from a fairly credible source, but there was a woman at the grocery store. This is going to be similar to what you were thinking about, but there was a woman at a grocery store, and she was speaking on her cell phone. And there was a fellow behind her, was white, older, and he got belligerent and agitated about her and said, get off your cell phone and get through the line. And then he started making comments about her language. And he said, and go back to the country where you came from. He goes, you don't belong here. And he goes, and learn to speak English, our native language. And she closes her phone and she looks at him and she says, sir, I was just speaking to my sister in our Native American tribal tongue. And she said, so why don't you go back to the country you came from and learn to speak our language, and then we can have a conversation. So, look, what you have to realize is any time that bigotry or discrimination is in play, it's born from ignorance. And we just keep learning that over and over again. And that's why education is so powerful. That's why traveling is so powerful. That's why the sign across from the front desk is so powerful. Conrad Hilton, who had some challenges of his own in the communication sphere, and particularly the way he treated women at times, but he understood that through international trade and travel, we could achieve world peace. Now, clearly that hasn't happened yet. But why did he think that? He thought that because when we get to know each other and we get educated about our different cultures, we will generate more dignity and respect, right? And that's what it was all about. So that was quite a conversation we had. All right. Damn, I wanted to get in the collaboration. Do me a favor. I want to get you out of here. How many of you know how to use track changes or the review button in Word? Raise your hand. Not many. Who would volunteer to give us a presentation on Thursday about track changes? Nobody. Amanda, will you do it? Okay. So Amanda's going to give us a presentation on track changes. Just you know, yeah. So because this, I want you to learn to collaborate, because collaborating in the workplace is crucial today. Many of you will work remotely. Do all of you know Google Docs? All of you know Dropbox? If you don't, I want you to get that way. You will with Spencer, so that's good. What other file sharing platforms are out there? Google Docs, Dropbox, what else? OneDrive, right? All right, so look, just look, Zoom, things like FaceTime, those are all ways to communicate in the workplace. So spend a little time learning about digital communication devices or group communication devices in the workplace, and we'll talk more about them on Thursday before we do the mean presentations. Hey guys, this is a great conversation. I learned a lot. Thank you very much. See you next time.